I think we can start right now. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on green hydrogen business opportunities in Uruguay and Argentina. My name is Florence Onsmen. I work for hub.brussels from Brussels, and a part of my job consists in assisting Brussels-based companies in exporting to the Latin American markets. And today I will be the master of the ceremony. Before starting, I would like to thank our speakers for their contributions and our colleagues from the Walloon and Flemish Investment and Foreign Trade agencies for the excellent collaboration. Finally, I would like to let you know that the webinar is recorded. The presentation will be sent by email, and you can ask a question through the chat box. But please do not forget to mention the name of the speaker to whom your question is addressed to. I will read the question at the closing of the webinar, and if we don't have enough time, there will be a follow-up by email afterwards. So now it's time for me to give the floor to Jimena Villar, our Economic and Trade representative in Montevideo. Jimena, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Florence. It's a pleasure to be in this webinar. My name is Jimena Villar, and I'm the Trade Commissioner of Hub Brussels in Montevideo, also responsible for AUEX and Flanders Investment and Trade since 2006. Green hydrogen is the key to decarbonizing the world's energy sector, and it is also an opportunity for Uruguay to take advantage of its potential as a producer of renewable energy. Next, please. Uruguay is a reliable and stable country that holds very good position in the region for foreign investment. It has social and political stability and a strong democratic system and high transparency index. Uruguay is a safe bet for foreign investors. The strong macroeconomic indicators have earned Uruguay investment grade and a stable outlook that gives access to low-interest international resources. Along all Latin American countries, Uruguay ranks first in prosperity and transparency indexes. The country has a law on promotion and protection of investment that established that foreign investment receive the same treatment as the national ones. Next, please. Uruguay is a leader in generation of clean energies. Approved in 2010, Uruguay has a remarkable multi-party-backed state energy policy with an horizon of 2030, with strong commitment to renewable energies, with ambitious goals, promotion laws, and tax incentives. In the last decade, Uruguay increased its installed power capacity from renewable energies. And the short-term goals have been largely achieved. Next, please. Uruguay generates 97% of its electricity from renewable sources. Wind, solar, photovoltaic, and biomass energies have steadily increased their share in the local matrix. It's a global example of accelerated decarbonization. And half of the surplus electricity is being exported nowadays to Brazil and Argentina. Next, please. With this clean energy matrix, hydrogen can be easily integrated. Uruguay ranked fourth in the world in relation of the amount of electricity generation based on wind and photovoltaic, according to the International Energy Agency. So Uruguay has a successful driven in first energy transition. And now new opportunities will arise from the end-use sides. Next, please. There is a strong drive from the government for this second energy transition and a common vision for hydrogen in Uruguay. In order to promote the green hydrogen strategy, there has been an interinstitutional group formed by the Ministry of Energy, Mining and Industry, the Ministry of Finance and Economy, the Ministry of Environment, the State Oil and Gas Company ANCAP, and the state utility UTE. The next step will be the completion of the National Green Hydrogen Strategy. So the second energy transition will have green hydrogen as a pillar. And the decarbonization of transport is a national priority in Uruguay. Since this month, there's also new fiscal incentive for hydrogen projects. The green hydrogen became part of the matrix of other indicators that qualifies investment for granting of tax benefits. Next slide, please. In the short term, we will see that there are opportunities in pilot projects, and Uruguay will launch a tender based in green hydrogen with support funds from the government. But our next speaker, Noelia Medina, will give us more information about that. Next, please. On the other hand, Uruguay is a potential exporter of green hydrogen for overseas markets. There is access of coast and ports in Uruguay, and the good road infrastructure and the complete coverage of electricity systems position Uruguay as a potential exporter of green hydrogen to overseas markets. There are excellent conditions for offshore hydrogen development in Uruguay, and a program called H2U Offshore for the production of green hydrogen for export from wind farms installed in the sea, that will be presented today by Juan Tomasini from UNCAP. Well, thank you for your attention, and now I give the floor to Ms. Noelia Medina, Advisor at Secretary of Energy, Ministry of Energy, Industry and Mining of Uruguay. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Noelia Medina. I'm an advisor of the Secretary of Energy in Uruguay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to show you today. As Jimena mentioned before, next slide please. As Jimena mentioned before, we finished our first energy transition that left us with an average of 97% of participation of renewable energies in the power generation matrix. Therefore, we are running what we call the second energy transition, which has focused in the decarbonization of other big impact sectors such as transport. And green hydrogen is in the first place of the decarbonization agenda of the government. In this sense, we will launch a tender for pilot projects based in green hydrogen with support funds provided by the government by the end of this month. Also, we are in the process of publishing our national green hydrogen strategy, which was elaborated with the support of McKinsey consultants and IDB. Next slide, please. In the elaboration of the roadmap, we identified some characteristics that make our country attractive for the development of green hydrogen projects. First one is the high availability of wind and solar resources at a relative low cost in the country. Also, there is high complementarity between solar and wind resources in the country. As you may see in the chart, we could reach an LCOE at scale between $16 and $19 per megawatt hour by 2030. And also another important thing to mention is that since January this year, we developed a certification that declares the green origin of the power generation of the national grid. Next slide, please. Some other important benefits for producing green hydrogen are the high water availability, since we have an average of 1,310 millimeters years of precipitation, and this helps to eliminate environmental concerns and the excess desalination cost. And on the other hand, we have a lot of sustainable biomass in the country that could satisfy CO2 needs for synfuel production, for example. Next slide, please. Regarding logistics, we have ports and a vast coast on the Atlantic Ocean with more than 14 meters depth. Also, we have no important climate events, nor wars or social conflicts. And regarding the national landscape, it's quite smooth, and we have access routes all over the country. Finally, as it was mentioned at the beginning, Uruguay is a country considered as very reliable in institutional terms, and is very well positioned in international indexes. These aspects de-risk hydrogen projects and makes Uruguay attractive for foreign investment in general. Next slide, please. Well, as mentioned before, also we are in our process to publish the national roadmap for green hydrogen. And this slide summarizes the key messages we want to give. And some of them were mentioned before. I'm not going back through them, but additionally, let me tell you that the green hydrogen and its derivatives represents a very important opportunity for the country, which will be driven by syn fuel and hydrogen export markets by the use of hydrogen for deep decarbonization of the economy in sectors such as transport, pulp and paper, shipping, and agriculture, for example. On the other hand, the development of a green hydrogen industry could create more than 35,000 skilled jobs, which include plant construction, operations, logistics, and technical education. These will contribute significantly to the country's GDP. Next slide, please. One big result of the studies that were carried out while elaborating the strategy is that Uruguay could produce hydrogen at a competitive cost between $1.2 and $1.4 per kilogram at scale by 2030, as you may see in this chart. Next slide, please. This slide shows the estimated development of the domestic demand up to 2040, which could reach over $750 million revenue for the country. The opportunity here could be driven by road transportation and green ammonia or methanol for maritime transport. And actually, the development of this market depends on the installation of a new port infrastructure in the country. Also, the estimation is subject to the international players' announcements and the International Maritime Organization decarbonization targets also. Next slide, please. In this chart, we can see the export opportunity, which could reach over $1,300 million by 2040. We can see high competitivity in jet fuel, driven basically by a connection to our green grid and the availability of biomass as a source of CO2, as mentioned before, followed by hydrogen for short shipping distance, and then ammonia with a lower competitivity. Next slide, please. Now I would like to show you a schedule that shows our strategy for the development of different applications identified up to 2040. The size of the circle represents the amount of production estimated for each use. In domestic uses, we can see heavy-duty trucks as the main application, also the one that might start earlier in time, followed by maritime transportation. Also, fertilizers might play an important place, followed by uses for coaches and buses, as well as syn fuels for other uses. In the export market, we identified jet fuel and hydrogen exports, followed by methanol and ammonia. And additionally, direct reduced iron, DRI, might represent one of the biggest opportunities. However, as I said before, a big port should be built for this purpose. Next slide, please. Well, some milestones that are good to mention here are that, as Jimena mentioned, recently the investment promotion law considered hydrogen as a high technology manufacturing, obtaining the maximum score in the technological level indicator, and therefore the maximum tax benefits given by the government. Secondly, we had the first request for environmental permit for an hydrogen project. This is a methanol project with an electrolyzer of 150 megawatts. Then, as I said, the roadmap for hydrogen is currently under validation and is being published very soon. Also, on the other hand, we have quality and safety regulation linked to hydrogen is being elaborated and should be completed in a very short period of time. And this year we'll be carrying out technical and financial studies regarding the needs for infrastructure adaptation, such as port, transmission networks, railway, etc. And finally, just to mention that Uruguay follows a promotion strategy based on international cooperation with participation in different events and celebrating agreements, also generating local capacities at a national level. Next slide, please. Finally, regarding the tender for pilot projects that we are about to launch this month, let me tell you that it is open to all users for hydrogen, and the government will grant support funds for a period of 10 years. The call will be done through a competitive process with support of the National Innovation Agency, and we expect preparation of this project to start by 2025. However, we will provide an early start incentive for those projects starting before December 2020. We are promoting pilots with a minimum of 5 megawatts capacity in this opportunity, and also companies can decide to be connected to the national electric grid or just install its own off-grid renewable generation. Okay, well, I reached the end of my presentation. I hope it was helpful for you. I'm available for any issue you wish to discuss further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Medina, for your presentation. It's now time to move on with Mr. Tomazzini from ANCAP, Administración Nacional de Combustibles, Alcoholes y Portland, who will present us the project H2U Offshore. Mr. Tomazzini, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. The idea is to present the hydrogen Uruguay offshore program, H2U offshore. Next slide, please. So first of all, just kind of a disclaimer. Please consider all this information as a draft, because actually it is a draft. We are working on the bidding round terms and contract model. So this will be published and approved by the executive branch, and after that, this will be official. Next slide, please. So a couple of words about ANCAP. ANCAP is the national oil company of Uruguay. We have the only refinery in Uruguay. We import all the crude oil and refine it. So we have three main business: is the production and trade of energetics. If we go to the last column, we also have business in the production of trade and minerals. And I would like to emphasize regarding the exploration and production activities, both onshore and offshore. That's why we are here today, because ANCAP has the role of being the agent of the state for everything related to exploration and production activities. So that's the same idea we will have regarding to hydrogen offshore, to have the role of agent of the government. Actually, we are basing all this program on the more than 15 years of experience in the offshore acquired during the exploration and production activities, as you will see on the next slides. Next slide, please. And actually, the H2U offshore is ANCAP's vision for a sustainable future, right? The idea is that in 2022, we are planning to tender offshore areas for energy companies that are interested could be interested in carry out feasibility studies and the potential installation of infrastructure for the production of hydrogen from offshore renewable energy, let's say offshore wind, because it's the more mature today. And this is important at their own cost and risk entirely. Let's say not UNCAP, not the Uruguayan government will make any investment on this project. It has to be a genuine project from the private sector. So next slide, please. We know the production of hydrogen is challenging today, and we know also the offshore wind is challenging. So we are trying to address that with two strategies, right? With flexibility and also regarding the timing, right? The flexibility, we want to the contractor, the private company, the international energy company, to propose their own development concept. And that concept could include, of course, where they would like to make the electrolysis process. This can be done more conventionally onshore, but also can be done specifically in a standalone platform offshore. That it's an option. Also, the scale or the phases of the project is completely open to the companies, and the type of carrier will be ammonia, will be liquid hydrogen, etc. And of course the market and off taker. Actually, we know that the market development could be one of the main challenges, because today there's not a market developed for the global trade of hydrogen. So and that's why we will be giving enough time for for the companies to make a proper evaluation of the feasibility of the project. We are thinking on more or up to 10 years for the companies to make the proper evaluation. All this development concept has to be submitted with what we call a development plan. But this development plan has not to be submitted today or tomorrow. It has to be submitted after the proper evaluation of feasibility that can happen after 10 years of the signature of the contract in what we call the evaluation period. Next slide, please. So this was already mentioned. We have a large offshore potential and very good conditions for development of hydrogen. A strong push from the government, as Jimena and Noelia already mentioned. So we believe this having a bidding round, a tendering process for offshore hydrogen is quite timely and innovative. We are aiming of capture the high interest of the market in clean energies. Next slide, please. So with this tender process is having today this schedule. We are today exchanging with energy companies, showing them the draft of the bidding round and contract model, trying to build attractive product. And we are working on that. We hope to have that finalized on May and be able to make the announcement on the launching on June. After that, there will be two important dates. Is the qualification deadline, because only qualified companies can submit offers, and the other deadline will be the reception of offers, that will be in November in the first bidding round. Why the first bidding round? Because we are thinking of having a continuous process of 2 bidding rounds per year, closing on May and November each year. Next slide, please. So for that, we have been working on defining what we call regions. Region 1, much more close to the coast, more than 10 kilometers, shallow waters. And region 2, more than 60 kilometers, also shallow waters, less than 50 meters, because the first bid round will be focused on bottom-based offshore wind technology. Inside these regions, we will subdivide different sites, let's say contract areas. And for the first bidding round, we will be offering a number of these areas for the companies to submit bids. Next slide, please. Regarding the data, as I mentioned, we have a lot of data acquired during operations activities of hydrocarbon exploration. So for the companies who are interested today to know what kind of data we have, we are organizing, offering data rooms for that companies. And of course, this information, all this information will be today we are talking about visualization of the information, but of course this information will be transferred to the companies after the signature of the contract for the evaluation during the first period. Let's talk about the first period. The next slide. Next slide, please. Yes. Today we are on the yellow arrow to the left. We are finalizing this bidding round terms and contract model. After the signature of the contract, we will have the first period that will be the evaluation period, right? The blue arrows. The idea is to have a sub period of 1 + 1 year. That it's mentioned there, like period 1. This will be for desktop studies, just to study the information that already exists for the offshore of Uruguay. After that evaluation, the company has to submit some reports, some studies. The company has the right to relinquish the area or to continue to period 2. On period 2, we will be asking to make some acquisition of new information. For example, geotechnical data, environmental data, resource method assessment. And also to submit some studies regarding this evaluation. Again, the company has the right to relinquish the area, continue to next period, and we are offering a period of 2 + 2 years with the optional to make a pilot also regarding green hydrogen from offshore wind. And after this period, you will see we have almost more than 10 years, right? Even we are thinking of having a retention period of 5 years more. So could be 15 years for the proper evaluation of the project. And on that moment, the company will be asked to submit a development plan, right? Just on that moment, that is the moment for the final investment decision. As you will see, is far away in the time. So after that, the company goes, if the development plan is approved, it goes into the period of development and production that could be 25 + 25 years for the development and production of the offshore area. Next slide, please. So yes, just the conclusions. I for the sake of time, I guess we can skip that. This was everything was already said. Next slide, please. Just to let you know that we are. If you are interested to know more, we are open to have some specific meetings to go into the details of the project, specifically with energy companies that could be interested in this bidding round. Next slide, please. Here is the contact information, the email. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present today.
Thank you, Mr. Tomazzini, for this presentation, which closed the Uruguayan part of this webinar. It's now time to talk about Argentina. It's my pleasure to give the floor to Aris Georgiopoulos, Trade Commissioner of AWEX. Aris is based in Buenos Aires and will give us an overview about hydrogen sector in Argentina. His presentation will be followed by this of Carlos Maria Rodriguez, who works also as Trade Commissioner in Buenos Aires, but for FIT, Flanders Investment and Trade. Aris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Florence. Well, in my introduction today, my presentation today, I will briefly introduce the current green hydrogen situation in Argentina and start describing some medium to long-term prospects and the potential. Before that, I have to say that I'm in charge, as Florence said, of the Uruguayan and Brussels trade office here in Buenos Aires, and as such, we assist Walloon and Brussels companies in their business development in Argentina as well as Paraguay. Just before to start, I just want to thank Lilian and Masabela, who work with me and who were of tremendous help in the preparation and organization of this webinar. So now, next slide, please. Yes, to start with. Well, in fact, a fact that a lot of people do not know is that Argentina has been a pioneer in the development of hydrogen in the region and even in the development of green hydrogen. In fact, in 2006, the country promulgated the first hydrogen promotion law in the region a law that considered hydrogen as a fuel. It has to be said, however, that they have failed to act on this law, mainly because they allocated a limited budget to it. But currently a new law is under discussion in Congress, and the objective of this new law would be to generate tax incentives for in order to attract foreign investments, and also to try to turn the focus on green hydrogen. Well, although the government has not carried out consistent public policies, the local companies have already stepped up. So the perfect example is the Ichinco company in the province of Chubut, Patagonia, which is the home of the first green hydrogen plant in operation in Latin America since 2008. In fact, they have a plant near their oil exploitation area, and there are 2 wind farms. Another important fact is that the province of Rio Negro adopted a green hydrogen strategic plan last year, as local authorities want to develop a global green hydrogen export hub from Patagonia. And a couple of months later, it was announced by the national government of Argentina that the Australian company Fortescue was considering a multi-billion-dollar investment in the province with a view to produce green hydrogen on an industrial scale. Next slide, please. So, what are the advantages of Argentina? Well, Argentina is among the countries in the world that could produce a lot of hydrogens at a very low price, mainly because the country is very well positioned in terms of natural resources. It has abundant natural resources. This would create opportunities both for the internal market as well as the external market. And according to some studies, the green hydrogen export potential of Argentina could exceed $100 billion. So next slide, please. Yes, so what is the local energy context, the local energy matrix? As we are speaking now, Argentina produces around 10%, well, approximately 10% of the energy matrix of Argentina comes from renewable energies, which includes renewables, hydropower, and wind and solar sources. By law, Argentina's green electricity must reach 20% of total matrix by 2025. So the country has to work at an accelerated pace. And according to some, this proportion could be sufficient to promote the local green industry and green hydrogen in a first stage. Today, Argentina already produces hydrogen. They produce 328 million tons of hydrogen per year, approximately. 99% comes from natural gas and 1% is produced through electrolysis. The country aims to produce 500,000 tons of hydrogens by 2030. Next slide, please. And I think it's the last one of my introduction. Yeah. So can Argentina become a green hydrogen industry? Definitely. In fact, there is already a small green hydrogen industry. So they have early experience. But the country has clear advantages. I talked about the abundant natural resources. The country has an existing oil and gas industry with a lot of experience. They have highly qualified workforce thanks to very good university and research centers. And they have port infrastructures, and they already have port infrastructure and gas pipelines. However, in order to become an important player, Argentina will have to make progress in 3-4 main aspects. First of all, political commitment and continuity. I talked about the regulatory framework. So they need to adopt an incentive-based regulatory framework in order to attract foreign investments. They have to improve conditions for external financings, and also have investment in infrastructure is needed. So that was it for my introduction. I will now let the floor to my colleague, Carlos Maria, who will present you the main clusters and institutions active in the hydrogen and in the green hydrogen industry in Argentina. To you, Carlos.
Thank you very much, Aris. Good evening. Yeah, I mean, good afternoon and good morning to everybody. Argentina has a very long tradition in hydrogen, and it has been so for the last nearly 25 years. Next slide, please. One of the clusters which have been formed in order to study and to see the real possibilities of Argentina is the WISEG H2R consortium, which has been formed by the national oil company as well as private companies which take part at this very project. It is very active and it is very well related to Hichico and other companies and the main players in this aspect. Next one, please. The other one is Plataforma S2 Argentina, which is at a private level. It is not as important as the previous one, but the main fact in it is that it is integrated by committees which are very active in the matter and which deal with other aspects such as regulations and laws and everything dealing with energy at a world level. Next one, please. There is also a very important federation of companies and very active in different aspects of renewable energy in Argentina, such as Cámara Argentina de Energías Renovables, with a very strong hydrogen chapter in it. Next, please. And then at official level, there are some important institutions dealing with hydrogen, such as CONICET. CONICET is a national institution for studies in every aspect of every sector in Argentina, and they have been working on hydrogen for a very long time. Next, please. The other one is Instituto Nacional de Tecnología Industrial, and it is as important as CONICET too, and both of them are very well spread all over the country. And one of the persons integrating this institution and dealing with hydrogen is one of our main speakers today. Next, please. And yes, this is a magazine of Argentina, which proves that Argentina has had a very long tradition in hydrogen dating back to 25 years, something which astonishes some people, but it is like, okay, next, please. And something which is going to happen this year in Argentina and in Chile, which is very, very important for Flanders, is that we are going to see a physical mission to Argentina and Chile for the first time after our quarantines in the world, and dealing with clean tech, especially in the sectors of water, soil treatments, clean renewable energy, energy efficiency, smart cities, circular economy as a whole. So those interested in taking part as this mission will be able to meet us in Brussels in June and to get the right information so that they can see the possibilities of taking part at this mission. Next, please. We are committed to help you in getting in touch with the main sectors dealing with clean tech in Argentina if you are to take part at this mission. This mission will be headed by people from our head office in Brussels, such as Mrs. Sabine Finke. And then the responsibles for that will be Pete Maurice, my colleague in Santiago de Chile, and myself in Buenos Aires. Next, please. And those are the contact data so that you can get in touch with our people if you are really interested in our mission in next November. So I thank you very much, and I give the floor to the next speaker.
Thank you, Carlos. Now let's hear from our first Argentinian expert who will go into further details. Mr. Hector Omar Echeverri is CEO of the AISA Energia and talking on behalf of CADER, the Argentina Chamber of Renewable Energies. He will present an overview of local hydrogen developments and potential. Mr. Echeverri has recorded his presentation, but he is here with us to answer any question during the Q&A session. Florence, can you launch the video, please? We have a problem. Florence, we can't see the video.
Yes, I'm trying to launch it.
Thank you. We have a technical issue. I think I suggest we move on with Ms. Abuin from the Argentina National Institute of Industrial Technology, INTI.
Florence, I think it's actually working.
El hidrógeno representa una oportunidad, pero también un desafío para la Argentina. Héctor Omar Echeverri, además de asesorar a la Cámara de Energías Renovables, asesora a empresas, embajadas, entes gubernamentales sobre la posible implementación de una economía del hidrógeno en la Argentina. Para abordar la economía del hidrógeno, la Cámara de Energías Renovables, CADER, ha creado un comité técnico de trabajo específico. Se trata de un espacio conformado por técnicos, expertos, empresas y miembros de CADER que a través de reuniones y acciones específicas analiza la competitividad que puede alcanzar el hidrógeno a partir de las energías renovables, los marcos regulatorios nacionales y provinciales que ameritan su desarrollo, así como la implementación de nuevos modelos de negocio. Argentina posee las condiciones necesarias para producir hidrógeno verde en gran escala y tiene una oportunidad única para participar y ocupar un papel preponderante en el naciente mercado de la generación, utilización y exportación de hidrógeno a nivel mundial. Los abundantes recursos renovables la sitúan en una posición excepcional para liderar la transición energética en la región y aprovechar las oportunidades económicas que se presentan. En ese sentido, la cooperación internacional es un aspecto clave a tener en cuenta. El desarrollo y puesta en funcionamiento de un proyecto de hidrógeno demora de 3 a 5 años. Pensando esto, 2030 está muy cercano y debemos trabajar en forma acelerada para poder cumplir los objetivos de París. Los valles de hidrógeno son una opción para generar energía sostenible, desarrollo industrial y contribuir a la creación de empleo con integración de la comunidad o región. Los valles de hidrógeno tienen el potencial de habilitar ecosistemas de hidrógeno integrados localmente como fuente limpia de energía e impulsar el desarrollo económico y regional. Los mismos permiten integrar proyectos de pequeña escala, mediana y larga escala para producir proyectos en escala para el mercado nacional como el mercado internacional. Con el objetivo de impulsar el desarrollo de la industria del hidrógeno, un grupo de especialistas del sector presentaron una propuesta de autoridades legislativas y del Gobierno Nacional para actualizar la ley nacional vigente, a través de beneficios impositivos y estabilidad fiscal. Buscan que el consumo nacional del hidrógeno de origen renovable sea del 35% para el año 2030. El régimen que se propone promueve la innovación, el desarrollo, la producción y exportación del hidrógeno como combustible y vector de energía, y como insumo para los procesos químicos e industriales. Las acciones que se promueven están diseñadas para contribuir a la reducción de emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero y el cumplimiento de las metas nacionales de mitigación. La propuesta fue creada y presentada por la plataforma H2 Argentina. Se espera que los valles de hidrógeno maduren significativamente durante la próxima década a medida que los proyectos se multipliquen y aumenten en tamaño y complejidad. La zona del NEA, el noroeste de la República Argentina, es una zona con promedios de radiación por encima de la media mundial, lo que permite producir hidrógeno utilizando la energía fotovoltaica como energía primaria. La Patagonia, el sudeste y sudoeste de la provincia de Buenos Aires son otro valle importante de hidrógeno para producirlo a partir de la energía eólica como fuente primaria. Zonas con alto factor de capacidad que bien pueden producir hidrógeno, amonio o metanol, tanto para el mercado interno como el mercado internacional. La zona de Neuquén puede exportar al mercado de Chile a través de redes de gas ya existentes, incluso como blending, mezcla con gas natural. Como mencionamos anteriormente, la región noreste de la Argentina tiene una radiación media más alta de lo normal y permite producir grandes cantidades de hidrógeno a partir de esta fuente, las que pueden ser distribuidas hacia el mercado interno, como también por el paso de Jama hacia Chile y de ahí a los mercados internacionales. La región patagónica es uno de los grandes valles de hidrógeno del país, con experiencia probada en el desarrollo y funcionamiento y operación de parques eólicos, el aprovechamiento hidroeléctrico, la experiencia del oil and gas, y desde el 2008 el proyecto de Chico en la Patagonia produce hidrógeno mediante 2 electrolizadores de agua alcalinos con una potencia conjunta de 650 kilovoltios, vinculado a uno de los primeros parques eólicos del país. Su capacidad de producción es de unas 96 toneladas de hidrógeno verde año a partir de la energía de una red conectada a los parques eólicos Diadema 1 y 2 y al sistema interconectado nacional. La zona del NEA y el NOA pueden producir hidrógeno verde a partir de la energía primaria de la biomasa, teniendo en cuenta que provincias como Formosa y Misiones no cuentan con gas natural. La zona del litoral, centro y norte de Buenos Aires pueden producir hidrógeno a partir de energías primarias varias, biohidrógeno a partir de los biocombustibles, a partir de la biomasa, los residuos sólidos urbanos, RSU, y efluentes cloacales. La provincia de Santa Fe ha sido una provincia muy activa en cuanto a las energías renovables, la generación distribuida, y también quiere insertarse en la cadena de valor del hidrógeno. Por lo tanto, vienen trabajando en ese sentido a través de distintas iniciativas. En el litoral atlántico se visualizan 2 grandes polos de desarrollo de hidrógeno, el puerto de Bahía Blanca y el puerto de Paso Interland, que tienen vientos de muy buena calidad, permiten avisorar un futuro muy promisorio en una economía del hidrógeno. El puerto de Bahía Blanca se ha transformado en el gran polo petroquímico de la República Argentina, con experiencia en la importación y exportación de amoníaco, fertilizantes y otros derivados del petróleo. Puerto Quequén se posiciona como un actor importante en el futuro desarrollo de la economía del hidrógeno, a través de la posibilidad de desarrollar exportaciones de amoníaco, fertilizantes verdes y otros productos derivados del hidrógeno. La empresa Jean de Null hace años que viene trabajando y operando en Puerto Quequén. Puerto Quequén también viene propiciando un clúster de energías renovables y tiene experiencia en lo que es importación de equipamiento de la misma. De acuerdo a las proyecciones, Puerto Quequén es un actor relevante en una economía de hidrógeno. Obviamente esto tiene que estar acompañado de los marcos jurídicos y fiscales adecuados. En la ICEA Energía y su equipo de trabajo venimos estudiando las proyecciones y posible desarrollo e implementación de una economía del hidrógeno para alimentarla en Puerto Rico. La agricultura proporciona medios de subsistencia para muchas personas, entre las cuales se encuentran aquellas más vulnerables al cambio climático. En el contexto del cambio climático, la agricultura está en el centro de los esfuerzos y las políticas de adaptación, porque las intervenciones en este sector son una de las bases de los programas mencionados para responder al cambio climático en los países en desarrollo. Existen fabricantes que ya están entregando equipos propulsados a pila de hidrógeno para el sector agropecuario, lo que sí falta una red de abastecimiento. La maquinaria pesada agrícola y el sector vial son sectores a descarbonizar donde el hidrógeno puede tener una importante inserción. El Grupo de Estudios de Transporte y Tecnología Ferroviaria de la Universidad Tecnológica de Buenos Aires y el Instituto Argentino de Ferrocarriles, IAF, está trabajando sobre el proyecto hacia un prototipo de tren argentino eléctrico a hidrógeno, en el cual se están llevando adelante pruebas pilotos, inyectando hidrógeno gaseoso o instalando una pila de hidrógeno en el coche motor. Las pruebas se vienen realizando en la línea sur de Río Negro, con base en San Carlos de Bariloche, en conjunto con la Asociación Argentina del Hidrógeno, que preside el ingeniero Juan Carlos Bolsich. Argentina es un gran consumidor de fertilizantes, también exportador e importador de urea. Producir fertilizantes verdes es una necesidad para el país. AICEA elaboró informes para empresas interesadas en la producción de los fertilizantes verdes en distintas etapas. El análisis del caso argentino muestra que si bien se puede contar con marcos normativos sectoriales e instrumentos de estímulo similares a los relevados internacionalmente, existen desafíos tecnológicos, económicos, financieros, políticos, institucionales, relacionados fundamentalmente con los altos requerimientos de capital para inversiones en infraestructura, en un contexto de grandes dificultades para acceder al financiamiento.
Thank you. Now I will give the floor to Ms. Graciela Carmen Arbuin from INTI, the Argentine National Institute of Industrial Technology, who will present you concrete research and development projects in Argentina. Ms. Arbuin is coordinator of hydrogen strategy and related projects by INTI. Ms. Arbuin, the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. In the first place, I want to say thank you for your kind invitation to take part in this webinar. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of research, development, and demonstration projects in the field of hydrogen in Argentina. Next, please. Hydrogen in Argentina, the work of research and development is made mostly in these institutions, some of which were mentioned in previous presentations. We have CONICET, the National Council of Science and Technology, with many institutes and technological centers spread all over the countries, mostly under the scope of university. We have this was not mentioned, is National Atomic Energy Commission that has several atomic centers in Buenos Aires and San Carlos de Bariloche related with research and development in hydrogen field. We have INTI, which I belong, that is the National Institute of Industrial Technology spread all over the country that is dealing with research and development in hydrogen in Buenos Aires mostly. CITEDEF is the Institute of Scientific and Technical Research for Defense that is dealing with projects in water electrolyzers and fuel cells. And we have several initiatives at universities all over the country. Next, please. There are another institutions, for example, the Argentine Hydrogen Society that created this institution was founded in 1996 and created the hydrogen experimental plant in Pico Truncado, Santa Cruz Province, Patagonia, pioneer in Latin America. ITEC is another important institution just mentioned. It's a public-private technological center focused in research and development, focused in energy. The center is formed between CONICET and National Oil and Gas Company, YPF. We have also INVAP, is a government-owned company that make applied research in several fields and now is introducing in hydrogen field. Then we have IMSA, that is a government-owned company focused in equipment development regarding renewable energy equipment, and now is introducing in hydrogen equipment and focus in smart grids. CENADIF is Argentine Trains, is a center that is interested in develop a demonstration project regarding hydrogen powertrain as demonstration device. And finally, we have several initiatives in provinces and national government regarding hydrogen projects. Next, please. First, hydrogen projects. We can mention the hydrogen experimental plant in Santa Cruz, Pico Truncado. That is a project that the goals are educational. It's composed by wind generators, electrolyzers, and a lab with demonstration units like, for example, a dispenser of a mix of natural gas and hydrogen for vehicles, or a greenhouse with heat generated by hydrogen. There was also another project called MIEM that was tested in Antarctic and was composed by an alkaline electrolyzer, an aeolic generator, and different applications like an oven or a fuel cell assembled in CTD. And we can mention an important project, a cooperation project. It is a National Strategic Area project that began in 1908 between several groups from CONICET, atomic energy groups, INTI, but basically that was related with studying different aspects of hydrogen production, purification, and application. The fields were ethanol reforming pilot plant, the research and development of purification materials, and the research and development of fuel cells, materials, and components, either of membrane fuel cells, PEM, proton exchange membrane fuel cells, or solid oxide fuel cells, and also hydrogen storage materials, these solid hydrates. Next, please. These are more or less the present projects in hydrogen. First, we can mention the initiative of the provinces. For example, in the Northeast, Misiones province has projects related with hydrogen production from water electrolysis for industrial uses and energy storage. This is the reason for this is that this province hasn't a natural gas grid, and for this reason is interested in the hydrogen production. We can mention Santa Fe province that has biomass production, biogas also, and is interested in developing solid oxide fuel cells that can be operated with, for example, biogas. You have in the south, in Patagonia, Rio Negro province that has great interest in green hydrogen production for international market. This province has a hub, has good wind resources, solar resources, and has also a good research and development platform in, for example, in BAP and Atomic Center in Bariloche that are related with research and development in hydrogen field. We have also Chubut province that is interested in developing hybrid energy systems to replace generators powered by diesel oil for giving power to isolated communities. This is a great interest too. Fine. We have also different research and development projects in groups of CONICET spread all over the country. For example, in Santa Fe, related with research and development and process and catalyst. In Córdoba, water electrolyzers and electrodes and catalysts. In Jujuy, in the northwest, there are investigations in water electrolyzers for lithium extraction applications. In Catamarca, there are groups devoted to water electrolyzer development. In Buenos Aires, ETEC is related with or is interested in developing technology like electrolyzers. Are some groups of CONICET related with research and development in reforming or catalysts. And yes, we can mention again the hydrogen experimental plant in Pico Truncado that is still working. INTI that is spread all over the country regarding research and development, but also is interested in developing the metrology platform and certification of origin. It is an important point too. Certification of origin of the green hydrogen and low carbon hydrogen. Next, please. Okay, this are more or less the fields of research and development in Argentina in the science and technology system. Fuel cells, either low temperature or high temperature of the technology of membranes and solid oxides. Reforming processes for producing blue hydrogen, water electrolysis to produce green hydrogen, hydrogen storage in solids. Another field is the feeding internal combustion engines with a mix of hydrogen and natural gas. Argentina has a good experience in natural gas feeded vehicles, and this is a good possibility to mix hydrogen. CO2 capture and storage, this is important, a field of research related with the production of blue hydrogen. And there are also cost analysis, certification initiatives, simulation, modelization, and prototypes, demonstration systems. Next, please. Okay, what about perspective of research, development, and demonstration projects? Well, we have a perspective in green hydrogen, where the main driver is to produce hydrogen for world market with renewable energy sources. Here, the perspectives are focused in demonstration and pilot units in order to make experience. The perspectives of hydrogen production in Argentina are more or less 200,000 tons per year. This is more or less the perspective, and in this sense, the existence, the demonstration units are good to make this possible. The conditions for this demonstration and pilot units are that the cost must be similar to other technologies. Another condition is the maturity of technology, so also acquisition costs and scaling up perspectives. Another field of interest is the material development of electrodes, electrocatalysts, or membranes and solid oxide materials for fuel cells. And modelization is another field of interest. Next, please. Regarding blue hydrogen production, this is driven for the big and important natural gas resources of Argentina. Here the interest is also demonstration and pilot units with the same conditions, cost similar to other technologies, maturity and scaling up perspectives. Also, material development are catalysts for gas reforming and purification stages, and process development too. Mixing of hydrogen with natural gas in pipes, this is a field of interest, but here it is possible to think first in small demonstration units to make experience, because here we know that it is possible to mix hydrogen up to 20% in natural gas pipes, but the companies of, for example, the gas transportation companies need to get accustomed to the risks of this new operation, okay? And finally, another field of interest is to search potential geologic formations for CO2 injection. This is an ongoing project that is to make an atlas of these potential geologic formations for CO2 injection related with blue hydrogen production. Next, please. Okay, perspectives regarding application. Well, here comes electric mobility, conversion technologies for vehicles, trains, buses, and ships. I must say that trains is ongoing. Buses also, there is a project regarding a demonstration project that includes buses fitted by hydrogen. Industrial applications like fertilizers, steel making, and oil and gas, and also heating. Here there is a project related with feeding with hydrogen the operation of a mining company that is isolated. Here the interest is the in situ production of hydrogen. As other possible applications come domestic applications and heating, for example, mixing of hydrogen with natural gas in pipes. And there are perspectives in all the support platform, like storage and transport. Transport is an important issue for maybe liquid, maybe compressed, maybe in hydrogen as ammonia, for example. Another field of interest is certification processes. For example, certification of origin of green hydrogen and low carbon hydrogen. And another field to develop is the metrology for the purity measurement and concentration in mixtures. Next, please. Bueno, I have to say thank you again. And only one detail. I want to share my screen for a moment. Maybe I can share my screen to show something.
We have to see Florence. Is it possible to share the screen? Can you allow the access? I think she's trying. Yeah.
Can I? Yeah.
I think
okay.
you can.
Okay.
You need to ask for it. I cannot. You need to ask for the sharing of your screen.
Okay. Yes, I wanted to inform you about this symposium on hydrogen fuel cell and advancing batteries held in Buenos Aires in July of this year, and kindly to invite you to participate of this Congress. Okay, I can send this first circular to the organizers for you. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Graciela. I'm taking notes as we're speaking, and I will send all the information about the symposium that will be held in July.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Last but not least, Mr. Patrick Maillot, CEO of Initio, Brussels-based consultancy firm, will give us his insight on hydrogen opportunities and on how to do business in Argentina and Uruguay. Mr. Maillot has an extensive experience of the sector, and he also has a deep knowledge of the region, as he was living in Buenos Aires until last December. Patrick, the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, Florence. Thank you, merci. Buenos días a todos. Un gusto estar con ustedes. Thanks for the invitation. I don't know, Florence, if you can share the presentation, please. Thank you so much. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. As Florence was saying, I spent the last 5 years in Buenos Aires, Argentina, until recently, and now I'm in Brussels. So I was asked to share my experience in terms of doing business in Argentina, and particularly in the hydrogen sector. And I must say that I probably left Argentina at the wrong moment, in the sense that I've seen over the last 6 to 12 months an acceleration of interest and commitment and announcements in this sector, which is, I think, good news for the future. And likewise for Uruguay. I had the opportunity to cross the Rio de la Plata a number of times on buquebus, and I always wondered when this boat would eventually be propulsed with hydrogen, and I'm sure it will happen one day or the other. So if you want, Florence, let's move on to the next slide, please. And the next one. So I'll say a few words about our company, Initio, and that will be very brief. And then we'll talk about why hydrogen in Latin America in general and in Argentina and Uruguay in particular. I think a lot has been said already since a little bit more than an hour, so I'll be brief on that. I'd like to share also some developments I've observed in in Argentina and Uruguay, but there as well, I think the previous speakers have done a very good job to give you an overview and taste of what's happening in these two countries. So I'll be brief. You know, that's the price you have to pay once you the last speaker in a panel. So to avoid repetition, I'll be short on that. And I'd like to also share some, you know, I don't know whether recommendation is the right word, but at least some observations towards equipment vendors and project developers when it comes to developing hydrogen or hydrogen derivative projects in Argentina and Uruguay, because although there are many very positive things, one has to recognize also that there are some challenges. So I'll try to share some of that with you. Next, please. Next again. So what is Inicio? We are essentially a strategic consulting firm active in the energy transition and sustainable mobility space. We also do support project developments in this sector. And we've started working in hydrogen and fuel cells very early, in fact, in Europe in 2006. And these days we have offices in Brussels, where I am at the moment, in Paris, France, in Bogota, in Colombia, in Chile, in Rotterdam. We have also some cooperation agreements in Beijing, China, and Mexico, and we've just opened very recently an office in the US, in the East Coast, in Washington, DC. So we have four essential pillars of activities: strategic advice. So we work with many corporate clients interested in investing or developing projects in the hydrogen sector in terms of where to position their solution, where to invest, what plans to pursue commercially and industrial aspects. So that's one activity. The other activity is investment support. So we advise corporate funds, investors, private equity funds, venture capital, development banks when it comes to investing in hydrogen sector, whether it's investing in companies or projects. We do due diligence work. The other thing we do is advise policy makers and regulators. We've been advising the city and the region of Buenos Aires in Argentina. We've been working with the Ministry of Industry and Energy in Uruguay, the Ministry of Energy and Mining in Chile, and so on. And there are many things happening at the moment in the region, and Argentina and Uruguay are no exception. All the regulatory environment which you need to be able to commercialize hydrogen in energy and mobility systems have to be invented. In Argentina, for instance, while it is true that there's been a law, hydrogen law, since more than a decade, the actual implementation of that law stayed in the air. So there is nothing really concrete based on which you could, for instance, install a hydrogen refueling station in the street, or store large quantities of hydrogen, or inject hydrogen in gas pipelines. So all of those things, and Graciela earlier also mentioned the question of certification. All of those things have to be, in one way or the other, invented. So we are there to help ministries and regulators to actually do that. The last thing we do is project development assistance. So it's about supporting companies to actually develop large-scale projects in hydrogen in the region. In Uruguay, we had the pleasure to work with Juan and the team at NCAP and UTE, the electrical company in Uruguay. In Argentina, we've worked with Hub.brussels, with Techint, with iChico, which was mentioned earlier, and CAPSA group, with Fortescue, and a number of renewable energy IPPs. Florence, we can move on, please. So this is a snapshot of customers. We'll share this presentation, I think, after this session, so there's not really much point to detail this. Just wanted to mention that we've delivered more than 500 projects in 23 countries, and About 100 of those projects have been delivered in Latin America and several of them in Argentina and Uruguay, so we are quite knowledgeable in the field. Next, Florence, please. Next again. So coming back to the question, why Latin America and why Uruguay and Argentina, I think there's some repetition here again. There are four main reasons, according to us, and why these countries offer a promising position and why we think in future there will be in the map in terms of producing hydrogen or hydrogen derivatives, whether it's ammonia, whether it's e-methanol, whether it's e-fuels in general. The first one is highly abundant and cost competitive renewables. That's really, let's say, the starting point. When you design hydrogen projects, you look at the cost structure, energy is the #1 cost over the lifetime of the project. So having access to abundant, cheap and stable energy is a game changer in making the project economically viable. And both in Uruguay and in Argentina, you have this resource available at an interesting price. The other is land availability and water resources. We've talked about this before. Argentina is just amazing. If you look at the wind potential in Patagonia, whoever has traveled to Patagonia will just recognize it's absolutely fantastic. The wind resource in many places in Patagonia is just unbelievable. And from that perspective, it is interesting. And the land available is also amazing. So from that perspective, it's very interesting. We in Europe, we also have locations where we have excellent wind conditions, but we have a big problem, is that we have urban density. And developing large-scale projects when you have a lot of urban density is not trivial. So that's something in Latin America you can really leverage. The third point there is you actually have a strong industrial presence in several critical sectors which are potential off-takers for hydrogen. Mining is one, and the steel and the green steel potential is a second one. Chemical industries, and in particular fertilizers, whether you talk about Argentina, whether you talk about Uruguay or even Brazil, have huge chemical and fertilizers industries, and they are feeding into this agricultural sector, which is a big industrial capacity in the region and in Argentina and Uruguay in particular. So that's all very interesting. And the other thing you have in both Argentina and in Uruguay is a presence of oil and gas companies and oil and gas national oil companies, whether it's YPF in Argentina or ANCAP, and Juan is here today as a speaker. They are very much involved in those developments, and they do have the know-how. Hydrogen is not new to them. Anyone operating a refinery has knowledge in terms of handling from a security standpoint, from a technical standpoint, hydrogen-related equipment, so they can really speed up the process. And I should add, by the way, a fifth point, which is very important, is talent, human capital. As Graciela was explaining just before, it's amazing, and the first time I arrived in Argentina, I was invited to ITBA. ITBA is a technical university in Buenos Aires. And to my surprise, that was in 2016, they had an alkaline electrolyzer, which they had built and designed internally on their own. They had also a modified internal combustion engine for trucks to be able to inject hydrogen into this engine while emitting reduced NOx levels, which is often an issue with this type of engine. So there's a lot of technical and engineering capacity throughout the country, and that's really something to note, and that's really something that the country can leverage, because having talent and people that are really able to handle these technologies and understand the nitty-gritties is certainly important to make things happen. Florence, next, please. So this is just an illustration that beyond the national markets, of course, everyone is looking at the potential to export hydrogen and derivatives. And I think that's going to be a key development in Argentina and in Uruguay. But this will be midterm. This is not going to happen overnight. We are talking about 5 to 10 years before those things start to really happen. But still, the capacity to produce and export renewable energy is what this story is all about. A country like Uruguay could potentially produce much more renewable energy than it does, but the national demand is limited. So why producing more renewable energies when 98% of your energy matrix is already renewable? It doesn't really make sense. You could produce more if you were able to consume that. And the way to do that is actually to start exporting some of that electricity. And hydrogen and hydrogen derivatives are the mean to be able to export further renewables. And the same in Argentina. Next, please. So these are some of the routes we anticipate. So certainly Latin America and Argentina and Uruguay possibly will be export routes in terms of hydrogen, and the import routes are going to be in the short term, meaning the next 5 to 10 years, Europe certainly. There's already some very concrete demand in terms of green hydrogen in Europe, and the situation in Russia and Ukraine is going to just emphasize and stimulate and accelerate demand in terms of green fuels and hydrogen in particular. We can also anticipate that Asia is going to demand import either green ammonia or green hydrogen, and to a certain extent, possibly also North America in some regions. Next, Florence, please. Next one. I'd like to share some research we've done. We've started last year to produce something we call the Latin American Hydrogen Economy Index with a company called New Energy. This is the first one, and our objective is to measure year after year the evolution of the structuring of the hydrogen sector in 25 countries of Latin America. So the next one, the first one was in February last year, and I'm going to present very briefly some conclusions, and the next one is going to be released in about 1 month. So we've measured 5 types of indicators. The first ones have to do with policies and regulations and incentives in each country. The second one has to do with the structuring of the ecosystem in each country. Then the third one has to do with projects, industrial projects, whether they are in operation or under development, whether it's hydrogen, whether it's e-fuels or hydrogen being used in industry or for storing electricity and so on. So we've measured that. And then the fourth one is about the use of hydrogen in mobility. And we've looked at vehicles and also hydrogen refueling stations. And the last one is international agreements. We've seen and observed that some countries have already signed international agreements in order to be able to export potentially hydrogen or ammonia or other types of molecules. Florence, next please. So very briefly, what are the conclusions for what concerns Argentina and Uruguay among the countries that have responded? In fact, the 2 countries are in, let's say, the top third of the countries. I must say that some countries did not take the time to respond. Now, if you look at Argentina and Uruguay, Argentina, up to last year, was a little bit more advanced in terms of policies, and the main reason being that they have a law already in place and they are upgrading that law, and that's going to happen very soon. Uruguay is a little bit more advanced in terms of the structuring of the projects and the ecosystem, as Juan explained earlier, and the colleague from the ministry explained. There's already calls for tenders for projects. There is a mobility, heavy-duty mobility project also under development. There is the idea of producing possibly hydrogen with offshore wind. So this structuring at national level is a little bit more advanced. But Argentina, as we've seen also, there are a little bit more projects than in Uruguay, the development. Of course, there is this big announcement of Fortescue, which is a game changer in a way. We'll see whether that materializes given the macroeconomic conditions in the country, but that's certainly an interesting announcement. And then some export agreements that have been signed. So interestingly, Argentina and Uruguay are well positioned in the region, although one must also say that Chile, Costa Rica, and Brazil are a little bit more advanced on that front. Let's move on, please. So this is a snapshot of companies active in the region. I will not go through that in detail. I suggest we share that after this session. I'm already running out of time. So let's move on. Florence, please. Next one. So some observation I'd like to share with equipment vendors and project developers which are looking at Argentina and Uruguay. First and foremost, securing financing and managing risk. I want to have an honest conversation with you. The potential is there, no doubt. Financing is another story. Financing hydrogen projects in general is complex because those technologies are still relatively young and immature, commercially speaking, and the volumes of production are still relatively limited. So all that makes project finance for hydrogen projects complicated. But it is true that in countries where, let's say, the financing of the economy in general is complicated, that makes life a little bit more complicated. And unfortunately, that's really the situation we observe in Argentina in particular. It doesn't mean that it's not possible to develop projects. It means that you need to secure financing from abroad. And you need to have very solid local partners which are able to deal with risk. So solid risk management is key, in particular in the case of Argentina. In the case of Uruguay, as we've seen earlier, it's a little bit less complex. The financing of hydrogen projects and the financing of the economy in general is easier. In both cases, though, one should not anticipate a huge and a massive public investment in terms of subsidies. We in Europe and in Belgium tend to take as granted that subsidies are a necessary mechanism for hydrogen projects. Yes, it's true, but it's true in Europe. In Argentina and in Uruguay, do not expect government to put large amounts of money to subsidize your projects in terms of capex. This is just not going to happen. And one has to be very clear on that. Now, the second aspect is understand the regulations. This is a very dynamic topic. So as we speak today, we are in a situation. In 6 months, the situation in terms of regulation will have completely changed. So it's very important to be aware of that, to be very well informed. We can help with that if that's necessary, and anticipate regulatory changes. That's not exception, that's the rule. The regulatory environment changes unexpectedly. And a good example of that is in Argentina. They had a fantastic, according to me, a fantastic program to support the development of renewable energy projects, Renewables. Authorities have changed, and the first thing they did is to cancel in a way or to change drastically the rules. That obviously means that for investors and project developers, that creates a huge uncertainty and risk you have to deal with. Stakeholder engagement, very important, as always, to know who is doing what, where and when, and with whom. Make sure you have an efficient networking in place. Participate actively in industry associations and clusters. The speakers earlier explained who is structured in order to be able to support that. So I think it's a good first step to make sure you participate there. The one advice also I'd like to share is build a local presence, even if it's a small office. Having a local presence is a game changer. If you're a technology vendor, if you're a project developer, having a small office there makes a difference. And don't go where everyone is going. Everyone is going to Chile. So if you go to Chile, you're just one in many. If you go to Argentina or Uruguay, you might have a competitive advantage because there are not that many players on the ground. And the other thing linked to that is Argentina is a huge country, particularly if you take Belgium as a benchmark. It's just an enormous country. And that means that to go from Buenos Aires to Mendoza or to the south of the country, you need to take a plane, and that's going to take you 3-4 hours flying. So we're talking 3,000, 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers, and that changes, the way you do business. You need to have local representatives to be able to interact, for instance, with the policy leaders in some provinces, Rio Negro, Chubut, certainly, because also they have a lot of autonomy in terms of budgets, in terms of political decisions. It's interesting to be there. And then land is key. Having access to land, in principle, is easy because one could say there's vast quantities of land, particularly in Argentina, and that's true. But land which combines excellent renewable energy resources, access to water, access to electricity, access to transmission lines, access to supply chains, and portal infrastructure to eventually be able to export either hydrogen or hydrogen derivatives is a must. And we see already some speculative behaviors in the region. So that's something really I recommend you look at in detail. Next, Florence, I think I'm finished. So you have my details. If you need me, I'm there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick, for this presentation. I see there are no questions, which means that our speakers have been very thorough in their presentation. That's great. So I would like to thank all the speakers again for their contributions, my colleagues, Florence for having managed the slide from the beginning, and you, the participants, for attending this webinar, which will be available in replay. Presentation will be sent by email. So if there are still no questions, I wish you a good afternoon or morning, depending on your location. Thank you. Take care, and bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Florence. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you very much for all your insight also.
Yeah, thank you very much to everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay. I will stop the webinar. Bye-bye.
Fueron todos. Bueno, entonces me voy a la mierda.